At a recent event, I had the opportunity to meet a young man who has written a book about my hometown of Greer, South Carolina. It's called Greer Bucket List 100 Things to Do Before You Die on a guest line today. The author, Jonathan Lovegrove. Welcome, Jonathan. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm doing well, enjoying my newly started summer break.
There you go. It is summer, isn't it? All right. So let's talk about when did you decide that you wanted to write a book?
Well, the idea has actually been kind of in the back of my head for a few years. I'm a volunteer at the Greer Heritage Museum. I've been making social media content about Greer for a while, so the idea's been back there. I kept putting it off, but eventually I decided I've got to do this. I'm not going to be able to live with myself if I don't get this into print. So it's been about 6 months. I've been planning, working on it, and it's finally out.
Yeah. Your book includes 100 bucket list items. Give us a few examples of what we'll find in the book.
Oh, there are so many things in the book, and I put up a few photos here. It
Cool,
is
cool.
a full color book, so inside and out, and it features kind of spots all around our community. So, a few of my favorites, there's actually an entire museum here in Greer that I didn't know about. It's the Ultimate Driving Museum by the BMW Car Club. I had no clue it was around. Then there are other spots that might be a little more prominent, like our downtown and spots like the historic Greer Depot that the locals might already know about, but those who are new to the city might not know about. So, whether you're new to the area or you've been around since you were born, I'm sure I've got some surprises in there for you.
Yeah, well, put me in the category of I've been here since I was born and raised, as we say in Greer. And it's just look, there's so much to talk about Greer. Actually, last week I had Mayor Rick Danner on, and we talked about a lot of the exciting things happening in Greer. Was it kind of hard to narrow it down to 100 items?
You know, it actually was. Some people have the reaction, how did you reach 100? For me, it was the opposite, especially on something like restaurants. When you start thinking through, okay, what are my very top few favorites? And you start to think, well, I actually have a lot of favorites. Like, how do I include just a few? Because there's only so much space. You don't want to take up half the book with restaurants. So I found myself having to cut and trim, and you start adding in events, and pretty quickly you hit that 100 number. So I agree. This was actually kind of a struggle to choose what are the top 100 places. And I talked with a lot of folks just asking kind of what are your favorite spots? What do you enjoy? So I did get some outside input to kind of narrow it down to this top 100.
Right. On our guest line today, Jonathan Lovegrove, author of Greer Bucket List 100 Things to Do Before You Die. Let's talk about those restaurants. Give me a few examples and some of your favorites.
Oh, there's so many good ones. I don't know if you've been down to Cartwright Food Hall.
Oh, yeah.
It's right on Trade Street. And here's my pitch. If you are in a big family, everybody has kind of a different taste preference. You go to Cartwright, everybody can have what they want. There's a burger spot, there's a sushi spot, there's pizza, there's a coffee shop. So, kind of whatever you're feeling, you can all go have what you like. And it's a beautifully renovated building. It was totally dilapidated a few years ago. They renovated it fully. It's just an incredible spot. That's Cartwright Food Hall. And if you're looking for a little more fine dining, my other favorite on Trade Street is Select.
My
Right on Trade Street. It's excellent.
Yep, yep. Select is one of my favorites as well. Of course, I have a bit of a history with restaurants in Greer. Another favorite of mine, and sadly, it just announced that it was closing temporarily, looking for a new owner, I guess, and that's Cannon's. And Jonathan, I started working at Cannon's. It was my first job when I was in the fifth grade at Victor Elementary School, and Virgil Cannon was my neighbor, and I was able to start working there as washing dishes and just doing whatever needed to do. I worked there throughout my high school years and my college years. I'd come home for the weekend, and if I needed to pick up some extra money, Virgil would let me come in and work. And so, but I would imagine that restaurants alone, it was hard to narrow that down.
Oh yeah, very hard. And what I'm hearing there is we need to have you at the Greer Heritage Museum for a history event and get an interview. I'd love to hear your stories from Cannons and Victor. That's some deep roots.
Oh, I kind of gave Mayor Rick Danner a bit of a hard time last week because, my elementary school was on the site where some of the new apartments were being built. And for the longest time, even after the building came down, they still had the baseball fields there. And so they're building over the baseball fields that I played Little League Baseball on growing up.
Oh no. Well, I think we need to have you back in Greer to share some of those memories so we don't forget. That's a big part of local history is making sure that those stories are passed down.
Yeah. Jonathan Lovegrove is with me today. Pick up a copy of his book, Greer Bucket List, because I'm sure there's some items in there that maybe you're not aware of. And let's talk about that for a minute, Jonathan. What is maybe, as you started researching for the book, was there something that was just really surprising to you, something that you found out that you never thought about?
Mm. Well, you might not be surprised with this. I'm a history buff,
Yep.
so there's one spot that kind of shocked me. It's down near Abner Creek Baptist Church, and it's this one tiny historic home, and it was the original location of Abner Creek, and it's incredible to see how just a family started this church in their home, and now it's grown to this huge congregation. And I think that idea of legacy, it comes up in the book where you see the historic side of Greer and then to the booming modern side. I know Rick Danner was on your show. I heard that and just talking about the growth, how far the area's come, how far Greer's come. I think it's just an incredible story of our community.
Yeah, and there are a lot of little hidden stories like that. I was speaking with some folks just recently over at GSP International Airport. And of course, I remember that when it was known as the Greer Jetport, and it was all open air. Nothing was enclosed. Anybody could walk out to the gate, and you literally walked out on the tarmac to board the plane. But there's a little area near the GSP that is known as Flatwood, and there was a school there. My dad went to Flatwood Elementary School, and so to know little tidbits of history like that, and we need to preserve that and let people know the new generations of some of the history of Greer. And I'm glad to see a young man like you who's interested in that as well. Once you came up with the idea, how long did it take you to write the book?
Yeah, it's been the actual time working on the book, it's been about 6 months on my Christmas break, on my spring break. I mentioned the book is full color, so one of the hardest parts was the photography. I would lay out a route on Google Maps and just spend day after day driving around town, getting photos of really all 100 locations. So that was probably the most time-consuming part after making the list. But it was quite the project, but about 6 months of work to finally get it into print.
Yeah. You talk about the photos, and there are a lot of photos in the book. So you took all of the photos.
I took, I'd say, about 65%.
Okay.
With the events, I was doing this over Christmas break, so there were some summer and spring events that I couldn't take photos of myself. So the Greer Heritage Museum collection has quite a few photos that I used in the events section.
As you mentioned earlier, the Greer Heritage Museum, you are active there. Talk with us about the museum.
Yeah, I would say the museum for me has been kind of an exploration point because obviously the collection is immense, but then the people who walk in the doors, they share what they love about the community today, they share what they've loved about the community in the past, and kind of seeing both sides of the picture. I think that's just been an incredible experience. So I would encourage anyone if you want to get plugged into the community, maybe come volunteer at the museum because for me, it was very much a starting point for this book, a starting point for kind of exploring Greer, exploring my hometown, and kind of digging deeper into what my community holds.
Yeah. Talk with us, Jonathan, about the hours of the museum, and is there a charge to enter?
Yeah, the museum is free to visit. We're open, I believe now we're open about 5 days a week. Our hours vary per day, but normally it's about 10 to 4. So check on our website, check online to verify that we're open, but we'd love to see you.
Yeah. And it's located in right behind the Greer Police Department, Fire Department. I think that used to be the post office, didn't it?
Yep, the historic post
Yeah.
office building and then City Hall actually.
Yeah.
But it's also if you get the book, the museum features quite prominently in it. So all the information you can find it in the bucket list book too.
Yeah, my guest today is Jonathan Lovegrove. He's the author of Greer Bucket List 100 Things to Do Before You Die. And of course, we're talking about the Greer Heritage Museum as well. I haven't been to the museum in a while and I need to come by for a quick visit. But the last time I was there, I noticed there was a doctor's bag there, and it was R.C. Alverson's, who was actually the doctor who delivered me.
Wow, I, that right there, that story, I think is just a glimpse at what I hear every day. It's just those personal connections in a community. And social media is great. I mean, I'm a Gen Zer, but in this digital age, we sometimes forget those like close community ties that we actually do have here locally. And that's part of the incredible kind of work we do at the museum is kind of creating those ties, reminding people of those ties, and then bringing it to today. So I love the way I formatted this because the museum, I kind of feel like takes the past, and then the book is looking at us today, and we're tying those two together into really what Greer is.
Does the museum have a website?
Yep, it's greerheritage.com.
GreerHeritage.com. You can find out all the information, location, hours of operation, and if you'd like to be involved, I'm sure there's information on there too, Jonathan, as far as how you can volunteer as well.
Yep, that's right on greerheritage.com.
Yep. All right. So we talked about your book and the fact that it was kind of tough to narrow it down to 100. Does this mean there might be a part two of the book?
There might be, you never know. I've also had folks from Spartanburg and Taylor say, "Hey, can you jump over to our community, highlight what we have to offer?" So I don't know. I'll keep the door open.
Yeah. If listeners would like a copy of the book, how do they find one?
Yes, so Greer Bucket List is available on Amazon, and I'm also very thankful to a number of local businesses. There are actually so many I can't list them all off, but the museum is one, and all throughout our downtown area, you can get the book in person.
Yeah, and let me encourage you to pick up a copy, especially if you like history and you're from the upstate area. And I do, I want to encourage you, Jonathan, to do this for other cities. One of the things I've been doing recently is, and the reason I had Mayor Rick Danner on is I've been doing a series of interviews of upstate mayors because I'm just fascinated with the history of a lot of these cities and how they got their start. And of course, Greer being right on the railroad, it was very convenient. There was a stop there, and every city in the upstate they have a story like that. My second hometown, if you will, is Travelers Rest. I owned a business there for many, many years. Still own some property there, and I was able to speak with the mayor there just recently as well. And of course, Travelers Rest got its name because travelers would come across the mountain, or on the way over the mountain, they'd stop and rest there.
Yep, that's right. And I don't know, that's a good idea. Maybe we should partner. I don't know, go around the upstate uncovering those stories. But I just tend to think if people get involved in their communities, find the spots that are active today, and then learn about the past, that's I don't know. I'm not here to solve all our generation's problems, but I think the more involved we get face to face in our communities, that's going to solve a lot of the problems our generation and kind of our culture is facing when we get back to community.
Yeah. Now, Jonathan, I know you've had some book signings and events to promote your book. Who is the typical reader, and are you seeing a lot of young people like yourself interested?
I'm seeing all ages actually. It's unpredictable who shows up to get a book, but I will say at our launch event, I was just shocked by the range from the people who had visited Greer, who were visiting the town on a vacation. They showed up to the event. We had newcomers who have just moved into the area in the past 1, 2 years. And then we've had folks like yourself who have been in Greer their whole lives. So I don't think there's a right audience. I think pretty much anyone visiting Greer can find something in here for them, whether it's the person who's on a vacation who doesn't know that Greer City Park exists, or the old timer who's trying to uncover those historic gems like Suber's Corn Mill. Wherever you are, however much you know, I think there's going to be something in Greer Bucket List.
Yeah. Jonathan Lovegrove, author of Greer Bucket List 100 Things to Do Before You Die. Jonathan, thank you for your time. Quickly tell our listeners how they can follow you and get in touch with you.
Yes, you can follow me on Facebook or Instagram at Jonathan Lovegrove, and please reach out. I'd love to get in touch.
And run by the Greer Heritage Museum because you might be able to meet Jonathan there and pick up a copy of the book. And I would imagine maybe even get it signed.
Oh, yes.
Jonathan, thanks again for your time today.
Thank you so much.